good to see you guys. How's it going, eh? And I know we got a few people that we've got like a whole women's retreat going on, and we got a bunch of the ladies that are away at that, and so like we have like a whole hollow section here. So if you're sitting elsewhere and you're like, you know what, I want to be the one person sitting in the middle of this like area right here, which you're kind of in the spit zone, that's okay. Come up out of where you are and sit in the spit zone. But thankfully, God is doing a work in our ladies are away, but you're here. And when it comes to the message we're talking about today, I was super excited about this because if there were one person in the room today, and we opened the word that God has for us today, and it changed, and it sunk its way into that one person's heart, it could change the world. It's that big of a deal. But I want to ask you a question. What moves you to say yes to something? What moves you to say yes to something? Because all around you, there are attempts every day to get you to say yes to something. Whether it's on billboards or commercials you watch or signs in the windows of restaurants, whatever it is, people are trying to get you to say yes to something. I made the mistake last week, so I was at home and the doorbell rang. And so I'm now in the habit of, when the doorbell rings, I don't just run straight to the door. I kind of go to the dining room window and I peer out to see who it is, because is it a friend or is it one? Because this time of year especially, there's people ringing the doorbell and they're trying to sell you things. Hey, I'll clean your gutters. Hey, I'll get rid of the bees. I'll do your yard work. And so just day in and day out, people are ringing the doorbell trying to convince me to say yes to their product. And so, but I was in a rush, so I ran to the door without peeking out, and it was one of the sales people. But this time, they were here to get rid of ants, right? See, if you've ever had someone not ring your doorbell and offer that, just raise your hand right now. And so, so the guy's real polite. He's at the door and he's like, I just got a question for you. Are you having any problem with ants? And I was like, not really. I mean, I've seen a couple, but we don't really have that many. And I kind of take care of the pest issues in my own house. He's like, well, I just want to let you know, your buddy Roger down the street, I'm helping him. And then Maria, like they're bros or something. And he knows them well, trying to connect with me, right? Make me feel guilty. I've been down this road before, man. And so real polite, I'm like, you know what? Thank you, but no thank you. I'll take care of the bugs myself, right? Have a great day, though, right? And I close the door. I have a theory. And so the theory is this, that when you say no to those bug people, like the second I said no to Ant-Man, and I walk away, they take an ant bomb and just throw it right there on your step, because the next day, there's ants everywhere in my house. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm sure that's what they do. But he was trying what? He was trying to get me to say yes to something. People that get you to say yes to something have exerted influence over you, right? And influence, and think about that term, influence, influencers, it's become kind of a social media thing. People are obsessed with becoming an influencer or selecting from TikTok which influencer they're going to follow. But what is the goal of an influencer? What are they focused on? An influencer is focused on, how do I get them to buy this? How do I get them to think like this? And by the way, did you know if you get enough followers on Instagram, on TikTok, on social media, you can actually make money doing this, like hundreds of thousands of dollars just by posting things on social media. It's crazy. But here's the fact that I want you to think about. We are all influencers. God has given every one of us in this room an audience, a network, a sphere of influence. Maybe it's your kids. Maybe it's the people on your street, right? Maybe it's the employees at work or the people that follow you on social media. But like it or not, you are an influencer. There are people within your reach that you can influence. What are you going to do with it? That's the question. Are you going to be like a tumbleweed or an oak? And I can explain that. It's an odd question. But Galen Anderson had this to say. We're going to put this on the screen. Galen Anderson said, a man's life is like either the tumbleweed or the oak tree. Some people grow just like the weed. They're of no value in their youth, and as the years of life come, they break loose and become a blotch on society. They have no useful purpose in life. They're just drifters. Their loved ones will mourn their loss, but society will not miss them. Then there are those like the oak. They have turned from the frivolity of life and have invested in things that have genuine worth. Their influence for good will live on in the lives of others after they're gone. Their death is noticed because their lives were spent bettering the nation and the community. They will be missed. Are you the tumbleweed or are you an oak? You know, Jesus had something to say about how to be an influencer. And it happens to be our verse to live by for today. Here it is, Matthew 5:16. Jesus said in the same way, let your light shine before men that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Will you pray with me? Father, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So for us to understand the significance of this verse to live by, I want to read the section in its entirety. So Matthew chapter 5, starting in verse 13, says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. May God bless the reading of His Word. So this passage is from a section of the Bible, a section of the Gospels known as the Sermon on the Mount, right? I don't really like that. I think it's kind of dumb, to be honest, because we didn't call, Jesus didn't call it the Sermon on the Mount. We did that. So those section headers that are in the Bible, they're not God-inspired, they're man-made. But the Sermon on the Mount, it's kind of lame. That would be like me saying, calling this sermon, this is the sermon from the pulpit, right? It doesn't really say anything. It should be called the Sermon on the Kingdom because that's what it is. And so we got to ask ourselves, who's the audience for this sermon? It's His disciples. That's who He's talking to, His followers. And does anybody know where His followers are from, generally speaking? They're from a place called anybody? Galilee, right? And so Galilee, just so you know, it's rural. It's farmers, it's fishermen, it's peasants. These are blue-collar people that Jesus is speaking to. So I want you to think about this blue-collar crowd. They would have seen themselves as quite insignificant compared to the Roman Empire and the citizens of the Roman Empire that kind of ruled the area at the time. And not just that, you think about all the religious leaders back in the capital city in Jerusalem, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. They would have looked at those people and compared to them, they would have been like, I am nothing. And so they had to be wondering, when Jesus taught that day, how could I influence anyone? Because these are people at the bottom of the social and the political and the influential and the spiritual totem pole. How could I make a difference? Have you ever wondered that? Because that's the question we should all be asking. What kind of influence should I have in the world? And so what I want to do today from the text is I want to talk about this. 3 reasons why you can and should be a kingdom influencer. 3 reasons why you can and you should be a kingdom influencer. And the 3 reasons are this: the conditions are right, the commission is clear, and the caution is critical. Those are the 3 reasons, but we're going to start with the first one. The conditions are right. You've probably picked up on it already, but Jesus uses 2 analogies, 2 metaphors to illustrate what He's saying. So before this part of the Sermon on the Mount, or the kingdom, as we've now recalled it, right? So early on in that sermon, Jesus taught what's known as the Beatitudes. And the Beatitudes, He was talking about the characteristics of those in His kingdom. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the pure in heart, that kind of deal. And then He spends the rest of the sermon talking about what His followers actually do. And then He illustrates them, which I love this about Jesus, because He kind of dumbs things down for us and puts the cookies, so to speak, on the bottom shelf so we can understand things. And if you've never thought about this, because He gives 2 simple analogies, and those analogies actually speak volumes about the world that we live in and the condition of the world. And if you've never thought of this text this way, I'm really glad we're having this conversation. I want to start, and I want to ask you this question. How would you describe the world? If someone were to ask you, describe the world that we live in, at least the part of the world that you're a part of, right? This country, this state, this county, how would you describe it? Would you call it peaceful? Would you call it pure and righteous and decent? Or would you call it maybe corrupt or dark or evil? Because by using salt and light, Jesus implies something real specific about the condition that the world is in, right? First, salt. When he uses this word, Jesus is actually implying that the world is decayed and rotting and needs help. You realize that? That's what he's implying. We use the term differently than Jesus did, right? We go, oh, he's the salt of the earth. And what do we mean? We mean, oh, he's honest, he's kind, he's a really nice guy. He's the salt of the earth kind of guy. When Jesus used the term, that's not what he's getting at all. Salt was used in ancient times to keep meat from rotting because they had no refrigeration. They couldn't freeze things like we do. And so if you left meat out, it was going to go bad. It was going to smell awful. So to prevent decay, they would rub salt in the meat so that it would not rot. Like, have you ever had or smelled, put your hands up, if you ever smelled rotten meat before, just put your hand up. Yeah. Like, you ever had that moment where you open the fridge and you're like, oh, what is that smell? And you're like kind of trying to figure out what it is, and you're pulling things out, and then you find you're like, oh, and you throw it in the trash, which is the worst thing to do because then there's nothing to contain it. So when you think of that smell, I want you to think of that smell when you hear the words, you are the salt of the earth. Like, that's weird, but here's what it's saying. You stop the rot. You stop the stench. You stop the corruption. That's what he's getting at. Secondly, he says, you are the light of the world. And what does this say about the condition of the world? It's saying the world is a dark place. It's filled with darkness, and there's a little bit of a cultural block we have to climb past to really understand this, and we have to go back in our minds 2,000 years because it wasn't like today. So today we don't feel darkness. Today we look outside and we go, oh, it's dark out, but we don't feel the darkness. Even at night, we have street lights and headlights and flashlights, so we can take most of the activities we do in this current life that we live in the daytime, and we can do those same activities at night, not 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, when it was dark, it was like really dark. It was the kind of dark you felt. And so when it was dark, everything stopped. People went inside and they lit a lamp, and it was like a little oil lamp the size of what you could probably hold in your hand, and they would put it on a shelf and it would give light to everyone in the house. But robbers, thieves, murderers, they would do their evil acts at night. They would thrive in the darkness. And so when the Bible talks about darkness, it's like a metaphor for the place where evil reigns. So when Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth and you are the light of the world, the implication is that the world is corrupt and decayed and rotten and dark. Jesus, tell us how you really feel, right? But that's the condition of this world, and I don't know if you agree with this assessment, but that's kind of the biblical worldview. And by the way, it's only getting worse. In spite of the technology and the excess information we have, in 2 Timothy 3:13, Paul says this, evil and evil people will grow worse and worse and worse. That's the condition of the world. And so I know I'm painting a dark, bleak picture, but I'm doing it for a reason. You see, the conditions are perfect. Perfect, just right for salt and light to have an impact. The conditions are perfect. They're ripe, salt and light, because it's dark and corrupt, can have maximum impact. The darker the night, the brighter the light. You can see it more. That's why I get so annoyed when people are like, oh, the world is so bad. Yeah, it is. It needs some good. It needs some salt. It needs some light. In other words, how rotten and dark the world is sets things perfectly up for God's people and for good people to do their thing. We're like, but the world is such a mess. The next time you hear the word mess in that context, I want you to think of something else. Oh, the world is such a mess. I want you to think of message and messenger. The world is such a mess. Yes, it needs a messenger to take a message into the mess. It needs salt and light. Conditions are perfect for it, for you, right, to do your thing. Dryden had an experience with just how messy and dark the world is just a few weeks ago. She coaches a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds club volleyball, and they had their final tournament of the year. It was in Pittsburgh. It was Memorial Day weekend. It was a 3-day tournament, and so she's doing the coaching thing, and so she goes, I said, final tournament of the year for this crew that had been working since December, this team together. But the tournament before that, like 2 or 3 weeks prior, there was something that went down that had caused a lot of tension and friction and controversy. And what happened was this. In this tournament that they were at prior to the final tournament of the year, there was this girl who was on the court. She was playing with the rest of the team. And at one point, the ref made a call. The play stops. And the referee on the stand is black. The girl that this story involves is black, and the head coach that the Dryden works with is also black. And so this girl on the court swears that she heard another girl on the team use the N-word, right? So and so afterwards, there's this like huge thing where she goes to the coach and she's like, that player there said the N-word when we were on the court. And so the whole thing just blew up and the club owners got involved and meetings with parents happened. It was so explosive. The whole event, right, was so explosive that like the following practice, Dryden and I had to come and run the practice so that the head coach could sit down and have one-on-one meetings with all of the kids over this event, because the kid that said she said the N-word, the other kid was like, I didn't say it, I swear I said this, not that. And so, but then all the girls, no, I believe her, and I believe her. And so it just completely split the team. Like, it's a mess, right? We're talking about mess. That was a mess. And so none of it really got resolved. They head to the final weekend, and they're in Pittsburgh. And the first 2 days of the tournament, the girls played great. They win all 3 matches the first day, all 3 matches the second day, but this here, the uncomfortableness is still there. So on the final day, it's the last tournament of the year, the final day, they lose a tough third set match to end not just the tournament, their season is now over. And so the girls are already emotional, and they're crying, and they're getting pictures together. The parent, by the way, and the girl that had accused the other kid of saying the N-word, all weekend long were wearing T-shirts that say, "Stop Racism." So they're making points, and they're like targeting this kid. And so like this whole thing was building up, right? The parents of that girl were like, well, the club didn't really do anything. We're going to take matters into our hands. So after the tournament's done, this is in a convention center filled with thousands of people. The girls are all standing around there. All the other parents are standing around. The dad of the one girl marches up to the dad of the girl his daughter accused and starts cussing him out. You dirty piece of ass, you effing, like the whole thing is cussing, like screaming this right in his face. And the guy's just standing there not reacting, right? A bunch of parents have to come and like drag him off and separate him. This is in front of all of the players in the convention center, right? And so finally he calms down a little bit and he's about to walk away. And just when he does, he turns back and he runs up to Dryden's head coach, the head coach of the team, and says, I'm sorry you had to coach that dirty piece of, and starts it on again. They literally had to drag him out of the convention center. You talk about dark. You talk about a mess. What a mess. And you've been in the middle of messes. You've seen messes happen all over the place. What a mess. We can freak out. We go, oh man, it's so bad out there. There's so much tension. There's so much, it's so messy. Or we can go, the condition is perfect for salt, for light, for message, for the messenger to go into the mess and bring Jesus, right? The conditions are right. That's the first thing. And then the commission is clear. What's the commission? It says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Verse 16 says, let your light shine before men. Every once in a while you read a verse in the Bible that kind of makes you stand up straight and lift up your head and put your chest down and go, wow, I'm important. Like I really, really matter. This is one of those verses. This is one of those statements. Mac was having a terrible day. It was a few weeks ago, and some stuff at school had gone down. And so that night she was kind of walking around the house, and her shoulders were slumped, and her head was down. She was kind of moping and walking around like this. So I said, Mac, come here. And she looks up at me, and she says, what, Pop? I said, I just want to let you know, you are my beautiful princess. Instantly, her countenance changed. That's what this verse should do to you. That's how this verse should affect you. Because when he says this, and Matthew writes it down, Jesus is using what's called an emphatic plural. An emphatic plural. Like, in other words, y'all, right? Y'all, like you and you alone, all of you are the salt of the earth. That's the idea. That you and you alone are the salt of the earth. And so but it's emphatic. This is a big deal. Because when you put it all together, what Jesus is saying is this: the world is rotten, yep. And the world is dark, yep, it's pretty bleak out there. He says, I've got a plan, and you're it. And in other words, my plan is you. My plate, you are the only hope. Emphatic plural. You are the only hope this world has. And if you don't be salt, and if you don't be light, there's no hope for this world. It is you and only you. How does that make you feel when you hear it said that way? Maybe if you're honest, you're like, well, that makes me feel a whole lot of pressure. What do you mean, me and only me? Like, that puts a lot on it. It kind of stresses me out here, Pastor. How about this instead? It should make you feel important. It should make you feel valuable. Valuable. I didn't mention this earlier, but the ancient world, salt had great value. It was so valuable, it was like currency. It was almost like money. Did you know Roman soldiers at the time were often paid part of their wages in salt? Did you know that? Have you heard the term, he isn't worth his salt? Where do you think that comes from? It comes from this idea, this practice of paying Roman soldiers partly in salt. In other words, it's saying he isn't worth his wages. They would pay him sometimes in portions of salt because it had that kind of value. In fact, we get our word salt from the Roman word salary, which means give salt. And the word salary stems from that as well. So we have a commission in a dark world, in a corrupt world, to put our value to work and be light, and be salt. Now, I want to hammer this down, though, and I want to get real specific on what exactly does that mean to be salt and light. What does this commission mean? What does it mean practically? So let me share a few ways. You be salt, you be light. The first is this. We disinfect. We disinfect. Just like salt was used, was like rubbed into and onto meat to protect and kill out bacteria, to disinfect it, that's what we do. That's what we do. Salt in ancient times had medicinal value to it. It was put inside of wounds, right, to get rid of infection, to disinfect. That's what it was. And not only that, it was used, it was rubbed on babies. Did you realize this? Back in the day, they would rub salt on babies, newborn babies, to get bacteria off the skin. That's why you read in Ezekiel 16, it says this, on the day you were born, your cord was not cut, nor were you washed with water to make you clean, nor were you rubbed with salt or wrapped in cloths. Like, this was a common practice to disinfect meat, to disinfect wounds, to disinfect babies. That's what you and I do. Christians are to be a moral disinfectant. Christians are to be a spiritual preservative, to retard or to stop spoilage in this world. I mean, you think it's bad now? Imagine, and this depends on your eschatological view, I get it, how bad things are going to get when the salt is removed at the rapture of the church. When there's no one to stop the onslaught of moral decay. In just a handful of years, the Bible says it's going to get so bad that God's going to come down and destroy everything. It rots. It rots very, very quickly at that point. And so you and I, we disinfect. We have a job of disinfecting our culture. Did you know that every single major revival that's taken place over the last 2,000 years since the start of the church, every single major revival that's taken, you can chronicle it, has a moral component to it? Yeah, people are being saved, sometimes by the thousands. But when they do, what are they doing? They're starting hospitals, and they're opening orphanages, and they're starting educational system for kids, and they're fighting poverty, and they're making society a better place. They disinfect. Christians make the world a better place. And so maybe you're wondering, well, if Christians, genuine Christians, do that, if we disinfect the world, if we make society better and safer and cleaner, why do people hate Christians so much? Why do they marginalize Christians, and why this push to silence them? Here's why. The world is wounded. And what happens when you pour salt on an open wound? Does it disinfect? Yeah. But people don't go, oh, that feels so good. Thank you so much. They don't do that. They go, oh man, that hurt. So when you and I, as that moral, that spiritual disinfectant in our culture, speak up and we do good and we say good and we do the right thing, it's not at times going to be without repercussions or visceral reactions. You got to expect that. And so you and I need to reflect on this and ask ourselves, when was the last time that you were used to stop corruption in the world? When was the last time that you were used to be salt in a wound and it caused a reaction? Because that's what we do as Christians, we disinfect. But that's not all we do as salt. We also add flavor, right? We add flavor. Sometimes food by itself is pretty boring. It's dull, it's bland, it's insipid. Soleil will testify to this. So I made scrambled eggs for her the other day, and she'll only eat my scrambled eggs for whatever reason. They're like amazing or something. But I'm making it with just egg whites, which is hard to really make them good, and spinach and all that kind of stuff. So we're heading to go to the gym, and I made her this bowl of scrambled eggs, and we get in the car. I'm like, here you go, sweetheart. And she takes one bite. She's like, oh, that's gross. You can throw those out. I said, what do you mean? She's like, there's not enough salt in it. I was like, you used half the bottle of salt, right? But we cook with salty spices and all that. Why? To add flavor. So in a lot of cultures for a lot of years, salt is used to bring out the flavor because God created this amazing gift called taste buds. And it would be a shame to eat food that didn't have taste. What a waste that would be. And so salt would add flavor and would enrich it. Did you realize that life, just like food, can be flat? Life can be dull. Life can be insipid. Life can lack flavor and be boring and feel empty, and people get burnt out and they lose their purpose, and suicide rates are high because of this. And this is one of the reasons people live going on these pleasure hunts and they develop addictions, all because these habits, they're trying to add flavor to a flavorless life. See it all the time. What do you think happens when they see somebody at work who is real joy and real peace and real purpose and real confidence? They see someone with flavor. It can actually be quite attractive. They go, man, wow, that's kind of different. I had that happen to me at the gym a few weeks ago. I go there with Soleil now to the gym. So I'm doing these 2 days like I'm in college, and it's terrible because I get up super early and do my workout, but then Soleil's going off to college, and I want to maximize my time with her. She's like, will you go to the gym with me? So I've been going to Planet Fitness. And so years ago, because I work out at my house, and I have for years, but years ago I used to go to Lifetime, I used to go to the Freedom Center for a while, but I haven't been there in like 15 years because now my home is convenient. Don't have to drive there, don't have to drive back. I save time, get up early, it's done. Right, but I've been going with Soleil, and I've realized something. The gym atmosphere has changed in the last 15 years, and there's something that has ruined it for me. You know what it is? Earpods, whatever they are. AirPod, what are they called? Rosebuds? I don't even know what they're all these different. They've ruined the gym atmosphere. I used to love going because I'd walk in there and people are saying hi to you and they're high-fiving, and then you do this set and then you're talking to people. Now you know what it's like. You go to the gym. Go try me on this if you haven't been to the gym in years. Somebody be sitting on the bench like this, right? Lay down, they're like, oh, boom, boom. They sit up. They're looking at their phone. Head never comes up. They go over to the dumbbells. They're in front of the mirror. They'll look in the mirror. They'll look at themselves, and they're like, boom, boom, boom. And then they look at their phone. It's like 100 people in the gym, and it's as quiet as a church mouse. It's wrong. It's dumb. And so I'm trying to break through that at the gym, and I'm trying to fix what is broken all by myself. And so I'm trying to walk up to people and make like awkward eye contact. Like they're lifting. I'm like trying to get them to look over. Like, look at me. And so I've had some conversations with people because I'm kind of breaking through this dumb thing that we've done in the world because it's no longer a community experience. And so I've connected with a few people, and they haven't called the authorities yet, but at one point, I'm in the locker room afterwards, and here's a guy that I've talked to a few times, and we've had conversations, and he looked at me and he said, there's something different about you. He said, I can't quite figure out what it is. Here's the difference. I have flavor. Jesus is my flavor. Paul said this in Colossians 4, 5 through 6. Be wise in the way you work toward outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation always be seasoned with grace. Here it is. Seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. We disinfect, and we add flavor. A third practicality is this. We create a thirst. Christians should be creating a thirst. Thirst, by the way, is just the result of salt doing its job. You know that, right? If you put salt on things, sodium on things, you get thirsty. I love potato chips. It's my weakness. But if I start eating potato chips, it makes me what? Thirsty. I want to have the pop with it. I want to have the water with it. Did you know that salt tablets are often given to soldiers or hikers? Salt tablets. because the saline, the sodium, the salt will help deliver hydration to the cells. So you got to know this. If you opt, and some people do, for a low-sodium diet, you got to be careful. Because if the sodium levels get too low, dehydration sets in, and it's dangerous at that point. Because you need water. So here's what I want you to do. You try this. Somebody at least in the church try this and report to me the result. I want you to prank your friend one day. So if you go to the restaurant with your friend, Applebee's, name that restaurant, and they order a nice tall Coke or Diet Coke, and then they're like, I got to go to the bathroom. They walk off to the bathroom. Take the shaker of salt and just pour a bunch into their soda. No, do it. Because here's what will happen. They're going to come back, they're going to sit down, and they're going to take a big drink thinking they'll satisfy their thirst. They're going to take a big drink of the drink, and they're going to be like, oh, that tastes good. And then they're like, but I'm still thirsty. So they're going to take another drink, right? Thinking I'm going to satisfy their thirst. So they take another drink, but no, it doesn't satisfy their thirst. It makes them even thirstier. Why? There's salt in it, and the salt is doing its job. It's genius. Just do it, and trust me on this. Because it's creating a thirst. In the same way, this world is spiritually dehydrated. It's thirsty. Do you realize that by your life, by the way you live, by the person that you live for, you can create a thirst? You say, how is that possible? Here's how. You live such a full Christian life that when others see your life, their life compared to that seems flat and tasteless and empty. You're living such a full, flavorful life, people get thirsty around you. That is when you get the opportunity to speak up, to introduce them to the living water, right? So we disinfect, we add flavor, we create thirst. We are salt. You are the salt of the earth. But not just that, we dispel darkness, right? So that's the role of light. Salt, with all of its properties, it's kind of invisible, right? Not so with light. Light's a little more visible. It's more obvious. Light dispels darkness. Darkness, metaphorically, scripturally, speaks of ignorance, wickedness, evil, sin. Light, right, scripturally speaks of truth. You bring things into the light. Peter said this, we are called out of the darkness and into his wonderful light. But here's the thing about light. To do its job, it has to be seen. You don't light a lamp and cover it up. That's what Jesus says. That's silliness. You don't go home up to your bedroom and open all the lights, and then quickly take blankets and put them over all the lights. That would be silly. That would be dumb. That would be pointless. It wouldn't make sense. Why turn on the light at all if you're going to do that? So verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. You can actually go to Galilee today and you can still see the city that Jesus was referring to when he said that, verse 15. Neither do people light a lamp and then put it under a bowl. That would be ridiculous. Why? The Christian life is to be lived out in the open, in public. We turn on the light. There's no such thing. Please hear me on this. There is no such thing as secret Christianity. It's not something you quietly admit only to your closest friends. Hey, psst. Hey, I just want to let you know I'm a Christian. Don't tell anyone. I'm just trying to keep it on the down low, but I wanted to let you know. No. Everyone should know that you are saved. It's impossible to have secret Christianity. Look at the text. What does it say? You are. It's about your being. You are the light of the world. The fact that you are the light is evidenced by the fact that your faith is visible. Don't even try to hide it. That's foolish. That's the silliest idea of all. It doesn't make any sense. Your job as light is to dispel darkness, to walk into your school, to show up at your job, to show up on your street, when you walk into your house, to be bright. But I'm going to warn you about this. When you turn on the light, it might reveal something in someone that was once in the dark. And just like when you pour salt in a wound, it hurts. When you open a light and people have grown accustomed to darkness, they squint. It becomes uncomfortable. I've done this with my kids. They'll be in bed for 15 minutes. I'm like, oh, I forgot to tell them this. And I'll walk in the room and turn on the light, like, oh, Papa, turn off the light. Because it's uncomfortable. You might, as a Christian, reveal something about somebody's life that they don't want exposed. You might dispel darkness, and at times the first reaction might not be, well, thank you so much. It's not pleasant. It might be like, you're hard to look at as a Christian. I mean, we had like 9 days straight of rain. You all had it. We were all depressed. We wanted to move someplace else. We didn't see the sun for over a week. And I remember it was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I walked outside, right? Because it was a thick gray clouds. It like just rained. It was like Noah's Ark all over again. I'm like, here we go. And all of a sudden one day, the clouds separated and the sun broke through. And I was like, like Saul on the road to Damascus. I may never see again. That's what we sometimes are to the world. When you're the light of the world, it can be uncomfortable for people because we dispel darkness and we bring things in people's lives to light. So we add flavor, and we create thirst, and we disinfect, and we dispel darkness, and finally this, we show the way out of darkness. Like you can take a flashlight and shine it in someone's face and reveal a problem and point out a flaw, and it's uncomfortable, or you can take and say, come here. Hey, let me show you the way out, and you can point the way out with the light. Light doesn't just dispel darkness, it shows the way. In Matthew 4:16, Isaiah is quoted saying this, "The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned." And it's talking about how Jesus is the way out of darkness. That's what we do with our light. We shine it on Him. Let your light shine before men. Point the way to them so they can see the light of God and they can find heaven. They can find that God. I grew up on a small island, Prince Edward Island, and one of the great features of Prince Edward Island, one of the cool features, is the lighthouses. The lighthouses around all the island. And people actually, they will go on vacation and they will take trips just to tour all the different lighthouses. This is one of the ones on the island. They're just beautiful, right? And and you can see the light shining out. And so people will, at times, they'll stand on the shore and they'll watch the light emit out into the darkness. Now, the light is not for those on the shore. The light is for the ships trying to navigate safely to shore in the darkness. That's who the light's for. That's quite the image, though, right? It's also the image of your life and mine. Our commission is to help people navigate through the darkness so they can be changed and brought to the light. Does that make sense? A little boy and his dad were on a trip in Europe. And so they went into this giant, really old, cathedral. And so they walk into this great big worship center, basilica-style center, and there are stained glass windows all around this huge church, and the boy is mesmerized. And he's looking at these great stained glass windows with all these figures inside of the stained glass windows. And so he's asking the tour guide, well, who is that? And the tour guide says, well, that's this saint. And who is that? And the tour guide says, well, that's Saint so-and-so. And who's that in that window? And he's like, well, that's that saint over there. And so that's what and then the tour guide does. So they come home, and the next Sunday they are at church, and the little boy is in Sunday school, and the teacher just happens to ask the question to the Sunday school class, does anybody know what a saint is? And the little boy's hand shoots out, boom, boom, I know what a saint is. And the teacher points at the kid and she says, well, what is a saint, little Johnny? And Johnny says, a saint is a person the light shines through. A saint is a person the light shines through. Does Christ's light shine through you? That's the question. One final point. So we talked about the fact that the conditions are right. Like the world, corrupt, dark, evil, all that kind of stuff. The conditions are right for something like to do the thing. And we talked about the commission is clear. And who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to be salt and light in the world. Now we need to finish with this. The caution is critical. There's a warning in the text, too, that we need to pay attention to. Quote, if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. That's the caution, that's the warning, which makes us ought to wonder, can salt actually become unsalty? Is that like a real deal? Now, a couple thousands of years ago, much of the salt that they had came around the area of the Dead Sea, because the Dead Sea is 25% saline, and so with evaporation, they would come in and they would harvest the salt along the shore, and there were times that some of that salt would become compromised, and it can be mixed with gypsum and different things, and so because of that, it would lose some of its flavor and some of its value, and it would be discarded, like it's a real thing. There's a book called The Land and the Book by William Thompson. And in this book, it's an old book, he describes salt that was imported from Cyprus and was stored on the floors of several buildings. And he said this, quote, "The salt, the part that was touching the ground, the salt next to the ground, in a few years spoiled. And I saw large quantities of it literally thrown into the street to be trodden underfoot by men and beasts. It was good for nothing." Jesus was right. Salt can lose its saltiness. And so when Jesus warns us, when he gives us this analogy, what is he saying? He's saying this: don't lose your impact. Don't lose your influence. Don't lose your effectiveness, because once you lose that, it's almost impossible to get it back. In other words, if you're so influenced by this culture that you are no longer an influence to your culture, you are no more valuable than the dust of the ground. Because you blend in. A Christian should not blend in. A Christian should stand out. One of the greatest desires of the devil is to render you and I indistinguishable from the world. To make it so that we fit in here, and fitting in here becomes more important than standing out. That's not a good plan. Romans 12:1 says, "Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world." No. Blending in, fitting in, that's not the plan. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. In other words, if you want to waste your life, or if you don't want to waste your life, rather, if you don't want to waste your influence, if you don't want to end up as tumbleweed, if you want to be a life-giving oak, here's what you do. Be salt. Be light. Our verse to live by for the day, and I don't know who submitted this, but I love it, finishes the text saying, "Let your light shine before men, that they may see," that's visible, we're talking about visible things here, "see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." Did you know your good deeds have a purpose? Did you know that? There's legit right motivation. Your good deeds have a purpose. And the motivation to do good is right here, because the motivation for doing good is not to bring yourself glory. You can use it for that. You can do good so you get credit now. And the Bible says you can waste your reward in heaven by obtaining a reward now, by letting everybody know for your own benefit, look how great I am. You can try to do that. But it's not the motivation God gives. And by the way, the motivation for good deeds is not to save you. Good deeds can't do that. It's useless when it comes to saving yourself. Now, your good deeds may just be the thing that saves someone else. That may point someone else to God for the very first time, because someone might see your good deeds and go, "Whoa, why would you do that?" And the door for the gospel swings wide open because you're salt, you're light. In other words, this: let your good deeds become the billboard by which you advertise Christianity. Let your good deeds become the billboard by which you advertise your Christianity. This happened to me a lot. This is kind of the one way I get to share Jesus with people. And it's pretty simple. Actually, it happened to Harris Teeter a while back. I'm in line at Harris Teeter. I practically live there. I go there all the time. And so I got a few things in my cart, and there's a lady in front of me, and she's got her cart filled with things, and the person that's checking her out is putting things in bags, putting them back in the cart, that kind of a business, right? And so she finishes checking out the person in front of me, and the lady rolls the cart away into the parking lot where she's going to load up her car and drive away. And when she pulls my cart up to begin loading my cart, she looks in the ground and she notices there was an item that had fallen out of that lady's cart onto the floor, and she never checked that item out. So what's going to happen? We've all been there, where you get home and you're putting stuff away, and you're like, "Well, where's I thought I bought?" You look at the receipt, you're like, "What? But I put it in the cart," right? So I know that's going to be this lady's experience, and who knows, she may need to feed her kids, whatever that is, for supper, and she's going to have to drive back. And so I see this happen. The lady's looking at it, "Oh, she forgot her." And I said, "Don't worry about my groceries." She said, "What?" I said, just ring this one thing up, And she rings it up, and I paid for it right then and there. It wasn't expensive. It was just a few dollars. I paid for it right then and there. I said, I'll be right back. And I took the item, and I run out into the parking lot, right? I'm trying to find this lady that had just paid, and I finally see her, and she's about to get in her car. And I run up here. I'm like, lady, stop! It's not the way, typically, evangelism should work, right? So, but I hand her this bag. She's like, what is this? I said, we fell out of your car, but don't worry, it's paid for. You don't have to go in and pay for it, so bye. And she's like, well, why would you do that? Well, hey, I know it's pretty easy because that's kind of what Jesus did for me. And so any chance I get to pay back what Jesus did for me and be a part of paying for something, like I'm all over that, right? It swings the door open for the gospel. And not just that, I run back into the store, and the lady who was checking me out, right, she's now checking my stuff out, and she looks at me and she says, wow, that was kind of cool. Why would you do that? Second time, one small, insignificant good deed. Your good deeds have a purpose. The more of them you do, the merrier. Create ways to do them. Go out of your way to do them. And let your faith, your good deeds, be the billboard by which you advertise your Christianity. Your Christianity, use every opportunity when someone asks a question to speak up the name of Jesus. Be salt. Be light in this world. Would you stand up and I want to pray for exactly that to happen. Father in heaven, your word is clear. We already have everything we need to be a kingdom influencer. We are salt, we are light. That's all we need. We don't need to know every Bible verse. We don't need to take 20 evangelism classes. We don't need to be able to answer every question. Nope, we are already salt and light in this world. And so, Father, for people in this room wrestling with, well, where am I supposed to be this? Father, I pray that you would make it clear. Today, I pray that this is a transforming message for somebody in this room that's like, oh, that is my purpose. Because maybe they've been drifting like the tumbleweed and not having the impact they're supposed to have. So, Father, I pray for your Spirit to do the convicting and the moving and the changing, and then we walk out of this place different because of you. In Jesus' precious and holy name, we pray. Amen.